Now it's my pleasure to introduce Damilola Okonkwo, a passionate leader transforming education in Nigeria. Damilola is the founder of Key Academy, Africa's first 100% project-based school, and a driving force behind change through EdTech, teacher training, and policy reform.
So good morning, everybody. Thank you for the very warm welcome. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending where you are online. It's really great to be here today. As Denise mentioned, my name is Damilola Okonkwo, and I am the founder of Key Academy, an education company based in Lagos, Nigeria, and our aim is to transform education in Nigeria using 21st century project-based learning. This little girl over there is me, 8-year-old me. I grew up as a first-generation Nigerian immigrant in London, UK. I lived in the parts of London that they don't show you on TV, and I attended inner-city government schools. I also lived on a housing estate, so it meant I was surrounded by many families from low-income households. Now, while that did present its challenges, one of the things that wasn't impacted was my education. I had a pretty good education. Now, for sure, it wasn't the most amazing education, but it was good. I came from a low-income household, so having this good foundation was exactly what I needed. My teachers were qualified, trained, received the support they needed. Our schools were regulated. I was even offered free school meals during the day. School was free as well. So for me, I only have fond memories of being at school. I absolutely loved it, and it allowed me to have that foundation. Now, it also allowed me to climb up the social mobility ladder. I then went on to secondary school, university, and eventually started a career in finance, where I worked for banks like JP Morgan and Credit Suisse in the UK. Now, fast forward a number of years, and I've relocated to Lagos, Nigeria with my husband. And we're at that point, we have 2 children, and we're at that point thinking, what type of school do we want our children to go to? What type of environment do they want to be in? And we're looking at the trends in the world and seeing the way there's massive adoption of technology and the fact that the education space was just not keeping up. We were privileged, so we knew we could send our children to one of the best international private schools in Lagos, but we wanted more. So I sat there hashing out an idea for this amazing 21st century revolutionary school in Lagos, Nigeria. And as I started developing the idea, I went back to think about this little girl, this 8-year-old girl. And I thought about little boys and girls like me in Lagos, Nigeria, who needed that start, who needed that support in their education system. And I realized, this isn't just for my children. I want to develop a system for other children so children across Nigeria could benefit from it. And that's how Key Academy started. So what's the problem? I'm sure many of you are aware that Nigeria has the largest number of children outside of school. In addition, we have low education outcomes. But I'm not here to dwell on those points. They are valid and they're there, but I'm not here to dwell on those points. Because often when you think about education and Africa as a continent more broadly, we often talk about access. And while that does require the attention that it's getting, we don't often talk about the quality of education. And I think it's important that we do start having this conversation. The current education minister in Ghana, he said something. He says, if we continue educating our children in this way, and we don't change the way in which we're educating them, we're not going to empower them, and we will not produce a better continent. There's an interesting statement he says. He says, you cannot memorize your way out of poverty. And I want us to sit with that for a second. We need to move the education system in Nigeria that focuses on rote learning, standardized testing, memorization, into an education that looks at developing 21st century skills that allow our children to really nurture the skills that they need in a world that you and I don't even know what looks like. We want them to become change makers and problem solvers, not just for their current environment, but also the world at large. And it's fundamental that we also support our educators. In Nigeria specifically, we haven't been able to invest the amount of money and time that we need into our educators. So often, many of them, especially within the national education system, are ill-equipped, and we need to support that. So the solution to that problem is Key Academy, as I said. The name of our organization is an acronym, and it stands for Keep Educating Yourself. We're speaking to the point that we raised earlier, that learning happens throughout our whole life. It's not restricted to the time at school or university. We're learning all the time. The first phase in our solution is our model school, which we launched in 2019, Africa's first 100% project-based school. Within this model school, our children are continually learning through projects, as well as developing those core competencies. But the fantastic thing about what they're doing is they're also developing 21st century skills. They're continuing to develop these skills on a daily basis through taking part in these projects. What our school also provides is an opportunity for teachers across Nigeria to see what 21st century learning looks like within our local context. Because often when you hear of new education paradigms and pedagogies, it's often things that feel so far removed from us and what we're doing in Nigeria. And we wanted educators across the country to have a bird's eye view into what project-based learning looks like on a daily basis in Nigeria. So you'll see that we share a lot online, and that is intentional. We've received requests to launch similar schools. We're based in Lagos and launch similar schools in other big cities in Nigeria. We've always declined those requests because that's not the aim of Key Academy. If we wanted to launch a number of schools and make a lot of money, of course, we'd launch more schools across the country. But that's not what we're trying to do. What we're trying to do is penetrate this style of learning across every school in Nigeria, in areas that we necessarily can't reach. And in order to do so, we've developed a technology platform that will train and accredit teachers across Nigeria. We're in our early stages of developing this, and the aim is to take the learning that we're doing at Key Academy and codify this into a technology platform that schools across Nigeria can use. Teachers across Nigeria can be trained in 21st century project-based learning and accredited too. The third part of our solution is regarding publishing and digital content. We all know that learning is not restricted to the four walls of school. We need to take learning into our homes, into our communities, and that for us is incredibly important. We aim to create and publish both books and digital content that children can use across Nigeria to continue to take 21st century project-based learning into their homes and communities. But not just that, but also make them culturally and contextually relevant for those children. A lot of the materials, whether it's books or digital content that children in Nigeria consume today, is from an international lens, whether that be from a European viewpoint, an American viewpoint, and sometimes even an African American viewpoint. But that's not contextually relevant to the average Nigerian child. They need to be consuming content that they see themselves in, that tell their stories, and that's a huge part of learning, identifying yourself in the learning that you're taking part in. And finally, we recognize that in order to have the impact we want to have, we need to work with government at a local, state, and federal level to really rethink the national education system in Nigeria. How are we training our educators? What does pedagogy look like? What does our curricula look like? All of these things are things that we need to work through with the support of our government to make changes to. Now, when you think about project-based learning, it's very similar to PBL that you may see in other parts of the world. So we have similar tenets in terms of how we build and develop our projects. But what we've done is adapted PBL at Key Academy. And I wanted to give you an example of a recent project that our children took part in to kind of help you understand exactly how we do this. So our children, they were ages 7 to 9 years old, and developed a project where they were looking at sustainable solutions for the people of Makoko. Now, Makoko is an industrious community in Lagos, Nigeria. Unfortunately, there are some negative aspects of the community where they are a little deprived, and the area in which they live in does not have the things that they need to have a good and meaningful life and work environment. However, we didn't want to frame this project in a way that made the children feel that the people of Makoko were downtrodden and hopeless. No. When we develop projects, we try to include empowerment. So we frame the project in a way to say, how can you, as young people, develop solutions for the people of Makoko to change the way they both work and live? And that's how we developed this project. The children went on an amazing journey over the course of the term, working alongside subject matter experts. And again, this is another key part of the way in which we deliver PBL Key. We bring in subject matter experts within our communities to support the learning that the children are taking part in. Imagine how amazing it must be to sit alongside an engineer at the age of 5 who's helping you build this prototype on solar power energy within your school. Not your teacher, but an engineer. And we continue to bring in these subject matter experts within our community into the education of the children. For us, that's also important. And what we're doing with PBL is we are creating change makers, children who recognize from as young as 7, even as 5, that they can come up with solutions to support their communities, to better improve their communities and the world at large. And imagine working on projects throughout your whole education, throughout your whole primary and secondary education, where you are continually change-making. By the time you get to adult life, for you it'll be natural. Being a change maker is very much a part of who I am. And that's what we're trying to nurture. We recognize in order to build a better Nigeria, we need to also develop change makers who are problem solvers and innovators and empathetic about the people in their communities. While the children are working on their projects, they're also developing their 21st century skills, and that's key also. It's important that they spend their time developing these skills that will do them well as they move into adult life, whether they go into entrepreneurship or even into industry. So we see project-based learning as a fundamental part of what we're doing, and the children get the opportunity to share their ideas with their communities and friends. For us, it's key. Now, what can Nigeria teach others about PBL? Well, firstly, PBL isn't actually new. There have been indigenous forms of learning taking place in Nigeria for centuries old, pre-colonialism, where people were using indigenous styles of learning to train generations. A learning that has been in existence for such a long time. So what we're trying to do is bring modern-day PBL and modern-day understanding of learning and education with indigenous forms, and really helping the children to identify who they are in their learning, promoting culture and history, and recognizing this isn't a new form of learning that's essentially just been placed upon us, but this is very much a part of who we are in our fabric. When I think about what we're doing at Key Academy, it's a massive mission and vision. It really is. We truly want to transform education in Nigeria and equip our children to be culturally conscious, innovators, change makers, and problem solvers. It's a mission, but it's a mission that we're so excited to be on, and we truly believe in the change that we're going to bring, not just to individuals within Nigeria or children within Nigeria, but what we're going to do across the continent, and really improve and raise the bar for education. The world is becoming increasingly globalized, and I absolutely love the fact that I'm surrounded by so many people from many different parts of the world. And I truly look forward to collaborating with you all as we work to transform education. Thank you.
Thank you, Damilola, for so eloquently sharing your journey toward the incredible work that you're doing in transforming education. Just a quick takeaway from Damilola: you cannot memorize your way out of poverty. We need young learners to become problem solvers and change makers by helping them develop core competencies and 21st century skills through project learning that extends into homes and communities and remains contextually relevant.